After heartbreak shatters her trust, Lucia escapes to Willow Edge Farm for solitude not love. But a quiet farmer's steady kindness begins to mend what was broken, until a ghost from her past arrives. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun lit up the fields of Willow Edge Farm as Lucia Navarro pulled her old blue sedan onto the dirt driveway. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles almost white. This was it. Her fresh start. Her escape date at 28, Lucia had left behind her apartment in Chicago, her job at an advertising firm, and a string of relationships that had left her heart worn and tired. The last one with Richard had been the final straw. Finding him with her so-called friend had broken something inside her that she wasn't sure could be fixed. The cottage at the end of the driveway was smaller than it looked in the photos, but it was clean and sturdy. A wooden porch wrapped around the front, with a single rocking chair that swayed gently in the breeze. Lucia stepped out of her car and took a deep breath. The air smelled different here, like earth and grass and possibility. "You must be Luftwetter's," voice startled her. She turned to see a tall man walking toward her from the direction of the main farmhouse. He wore faded jeans, work boots, and a simple flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. "Yes," she said, instantly on guard. "And you must be Colt Mason." He nodded, stopping a respectful distance away. "That's me. Hope the drive wasn't too bad." "It was fine." Lucia crossed her arms, already looking for signs that he was just like all the rest, charming on the surface, selfish underneath. Colt didn't smile too widely or try to win her over. He simply nodded and said, "I've got the keys to the cottage." The agreement was help in the gardens in exchange for rent. "Right, that's what we discussed over the phone." "Good, I could use the help." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single key attached to a small wooden keychain shaped like a leaf. "Here you go, it's all yours. There's fresh linens in the closet, and I stocked the fridge with some basics. Figured you'd be tired after the drive." Lucia took the key, surprised by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you, I'll let you get settled. Come by the main house when you're ready and I'll show you around the farm." He turned to leave, then paused. "And Lucia, welcome to Willow Edge." As he walked away, Lucia watched him, trying to figure him out. He wasn't what she expected. There was no smooth talk, no lingering looks, no attempts to charm her, just a straightforward welcome. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. The next morning, Lucia woke to the sound of birds outside her window. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then reality settled in, and with it came a wave of relief. She wasn't in Chicago anymore. She was far away from Richard, from the pitying looks of friends, from the life that had slowly been suffocating her. After a quick shower and breakfast, she walked to the main farmhouse. It was a beautiful two-story structure with white siding and a wraparound porch similar to a cottage. Flower beds lined the walkway, filled with colorful blooms she couldn't name. Before she could knock, the front door opened, and Colt stepped out, wiping his hands on a dish. "Morning," he said. "Coffee?" "Yes, please." Inside, the house was clean and simply furnished, comfortable without being fancy. The kitchen had an old wooden table with 4 chairs, and sunlight streamed through large windows. Colt poured her a mug of coffee and set it on the table, along with cream and sugar. "So," Lucia said, taking a sip, "tell me about the garden work." "Straight to business, I like that." Colt sat across from her. "I grow vegetables and herbs organic. No chemicals. I supply 3 local restaurants and have a stand at the farmer's market on Saturdays. It's a lot for one person to handle, especially during harvest season, which is coming up soon." "What would I be doing exactly?" "Planting, weeding, harvesting." "I can teach you everything you need to know," Lucia nodded. "I'm a quick learner." I believe that. Colt's eyes met hers, steady and clear. There was something in his gaze that was different from the men she'd known. No hidden agenda, no performance. After coffee, Colt showed her around the farm. There were rows of vegetables stretching across 5 acres, a small orchard of apple and pear trees, and a greenhouse for starting seedlings. Beyond the cultivated land was a pond surrounded by willow trees that gave the farm its name. "It's beautiful," Lucia admitted, as they stood by the pond, watching dragonflies skim across the surface. "It's home," Colt said simply. "Been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built that cottage you're staying in for my grandmother when they first got married. Said she needed her own space sometimes." "Smart man," Colt smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "It was taught me everything I know about farming, and about treating people right." There was something in his voice that made Lucia look at him more closely, a sincerity that was rare in her experience. "Well," she said, breaking the moment, "when do I start?" The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Lucia would work in the gardens from early morning until early afternoon, learning as she went. Colt was a patient teacher, showing her how to tell when vegetables were ready for picking, how to prune the tomato plants for better yield, how to save seeds for next year's planting. He never hovered too close or made her uncomfortable. When they worked side by side, he kept a respectful distance, focused on the task at hand. In the evenings, Lucia would retreat to her cottage, sometimes reading on the porch as the sun set, sometimes calling her sister in Chicago for updates on the life she'd left behind. "So, what's he like?" This farmer you're working for?" her sister Elena asked one evening. "He's different," Lucia said, watching as Colt walked from the barn to the main house, carrying tools from the dais. "Work, different good or different bad, just different. He doesn't try to impress me or flirt or any of that. He just ... is." Elena laughed. "Sounds boring." "No," Lucia said thoughtfully. "Not boring, real." After hanging up, Lucia sat on her porch, thinking about that word, real. It was what she'd been searching for when she left Chicago, wasn't it? Something authentic in a world that felt increasingly fake. Her thoughts were interrupted by Colt's voice calling from the edge of her yard. Lucia got a minute. She walked to meet him, noticing he held a basket covered with a checkered cloth. "Mutt, from down the road, brought over some fresh-baked bread and her famous blackberry jam. Thought you might like some." "That's very kind. Thank you." Lucia took the basket, surprised again by his thoughtfulness. "There's enough for breakfast tomorrow too," he added. "Thought we could start a bit later. You've been working hard." "I don't mind the work, I know, but everyone needs a break now." And then their eyes met, and for a moment Lucia felt something shift between them, a recognition, perhaps, of the quiet understanding that had been building over the weeks. "Good night," Lucia, Colt said softly, turning to leave. "Good night, Colt." She watched him walk away, the twilight wrapping around his tall figure like a gentle embrace. For the first time in a long while, she didn't immediately look for flaws or reasons to keep her guard up. Instead, she simply appreciated the moment for what it was, a small kindness from a good man. Summer gave way to early fall, and the farm's rhythms changed with the season. The days grew shorter, the mornings cooler, and the harvest more abundant. Lucia and Colt worked long hours gathering the fruits of their labor, sometimes talking, sometimes working in comfortable silence. One particularly successful day at the farmer's market, after they had sold nearly everything they'd brought, Colt suggested they celebrate. "I was thinking of grilling some steaks for dinner. Would you like to join me?" Lucia hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." That evening, they sat on the main house's porch enjoying the meal Colt had prepared. The steaks were perfectly cooked, served with roasted vegetables from their garden and a bottle of red wine from a local vineyard. "This is delicious," Lucia said, taking a sip of her wine. "Thanks. Don't get to cook for anyone very often. No family nearby. My parents moved to Florida when they retired. No siblings." "What about you?" "Just your sister in Chicago, and my parents in Arizona. They moved there after my dad retired." Colt nodded. "You don't talk much about Chicago bad memories." Lucia stared at her plate for a moment. "Some. Not all. I had a good job, some good friends, but I needed a change because of a man." Colt asked, then immediately added, "Sorry, that's none of my business." "No, it's okay." Lucia took another sip of wine, gathering her courage. "Yes, partly because of a man, Richard. We were together for 2 years. I thought we were building something real. Turns out he was building something with my friend Jessica at the same time." Colt's expression darkened. "I'm sorry. That's a terrible thing to do to someone." "It wasn't the first time I'd been lied to." Lucia's voice turned bitter. "Just the last straw." By the time Daniel returned to the house, Sophia had washed the breakfast dishes and was sitting at the kitchen table with a pad of paper, making lists. He came in, took off his work boots at the door, and washed his hands at the sink. "Sleep okay?" he asked. Sophia nodded. "Better than I have in months." She glanced down at her lists. "I'm trying to figure out my next steps. I should probably head into town, see about a hotel while I sort things out." Daniel dried his hands on a towel. "There's no hotel in Willow Creek. Nearest one's in Riverdale, about 20 miles from here." He paused. "You're welcome to stay here until you figure things out. Like I said, this was your grandmother's place first." Sophia looked up, surprised. "You'd let a complete stranger stay in your house?" "You're Elena Rivera's granddaughter," he said simply, as if that explained everything. "Besides, it gets quiet out here. Some company might be nice for a change." Sophia studied him. In the city, an offer like this would come with expectations. But Daniel's face showed nothing but sincere kindness. And where else could she go? Her savings wouldn't last long at a hotel, and she couldn't face going back to Boston, where her mother and sister were still furious with her for ruining everything. "Just for a few days," she agreed finally, "until I figure out what's next. And I'll help around the place on my keep." Daniel nodded. "Fair enough." He glanced at her city clothes. "Though you might want something more practical to wear if you're planning to help on a farm." Sophia looked down at her designer jeans and silk blouse, the only clean clothes she had left. "This is all I brought. I might have some old things. That could work," Daniel offered. "And we can go into town later for supplies if you want." Later that afternoon, Sophia found herself wearing an old flannel shirt of Daniel's rolled up at the sleeves and tied at the waist, and a pair of work pants held up with a belt cinched to the tightest notch. The outfit was ridiculous, but strangely comfortable. Daniel took her on a tour of the farm, the vegetable gardens, the chicken coops, the small orchard, and finally, down to Willow Creek itself, which ran along the back of the property. "My grandmother used to write about swimming here in the summer," Sophia said, looking at the clear water bubbling over smooth stones. "It's still good for swimming," Daniel replied. deep enough in the middle but safe. As they walked back toward the house, Sophia felt a strange sense of connection to this place, as if some part of her remembered it, even though she'd never been here before. "So what happened?" Daniel asked as they reached the porch. "If you don't mind me asking, what brings a city girl like you all the way out here, looking like you're running from something?" Sophia sat down on the porch steps, suddenly tired. "I was engaged," she said. "The wedding was in 3 weeks. Richard Prescott, his family owns half of Boston, or at least it feels that way. It was supposed to be the perfect match. But," Daniel prompted, sitting down beside her, "but I found out he was cheating with multiple women." Sophia's voice hardened. "When I confronted him, he said it didn't mean anything, that once we were married things would be different." Daniel frowned. "And you didn't believe him?" "No, I believed him," Sophia said with a bitter laugh. "That's the sad part. I believed that once we were married he'd stop looking elsewhere. But then I realized I didn't want a marriage like that, where I was just ... decorative, the perfect society wife who looked the other way." She took a deep breath. "My mother and sister think I'm throwing away the opportunity of a lifetime. They keep calling, telling me to go back, apologize to Richard, save the wedding." Sophia shook her head. "I just couldn't breathe anymore. So I remembered my grandmother's letters about this place, how peaceful it was. I thought maybe if I could find it I could figure out what to do next." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "For what it's worth," he finally said, "I think you made the right choice. Some things aren't worth saving." The simple validation in his words made Sophia's eyes sting with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered, as the sun began to set. They went inside and prepared dinner together, a simple meal of pasta with fresh tomatoes and herbs from Daniel's garden. The domesticity of the scene struck Sophia as they worked side by side in the kitchen. With Richard, she'd rarely cooked. They'd always eaten out or had food delivered. "You never told me what you do," Sophia said as they sat down to eat. "Besides, farming, I mean, this is pretty much it," Daniel replied. "I grow organic vegetables, keep some chickens for eggs, and maintain the orchard. I sell at farmers markets in the surrounding towns and to a few restaurants in Riverdale. It's not glamorous, but it's a good life." "It seems peaceful," Sophia said. Daniel's eyes held a hint of sadness. "It can be too quiet sometimes. My fiancé thought so. She left 3 years ago, said she couldn't stand another day of nothing but birds and crickets for company." Sophia looked at him with new understanding. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "Don't be. She was right. This life isn't for everyone. But I couldn't imagine living anywhere else." He looked at Sophia curiously. "What about you? What did you do in Boston?" "I worked at an art gallery," Sophia replied. "But it was more of a hobby than a career. Richard didn't think I needed to work after we got married." "And what did you think?" Daniel asked. The question caught Sophia off guard. No one had asked what she wanted in a long time. "I love art," she said slowly. "I studied art history in college. Working at the gallery was the one thing that was truly mine." She sighed. "But it never seemed important enough to fight for." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Well, you're welcome to stay here as long as you need to figure things out. No pressure, no timeline." That night, as Sophia lay in bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the countryside, she thought about Daniel's offer. Just a few days, she told herself, just until she had a plan. But as she drifted off to sleep, a small voice in her head whispered that perhaps she had already found exactly where she needed to be. A week passed at Willow Creek Farm. And then another. Sophia's just a few days stretched into 14. Each morning she woke up expecting to feel the urge to leave, to move on, to figure out her next step. Instead, she found herself settling into a routine that felt surprisingly right. She called her sister Kate to let her know she was safe. "You can't hide on some farm forever, Sophia," Kate had said, exasperation clear in her voice. "Mom is beside herself, and Richard keeps calling us looking for you." "I'm not hiding," Sophia replied. "I'm just ... figuring things out." "Well, figure them out quickly. The longer you stay away, the harder it will be to fix this mess." But Sophia didn't want to fix the mess. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. Each morning, she helped Daniel collect eggs from the chicken coop. Her first attempt had been a disaster. She'd been terrified of the hens and dropped half the eggs. Daniel hadn't laughed at her, though. He'd just shown her how to approach the birds confidently, how to reach under them gently for the eggs. Now, 2 weeks in, the chickens knew her. They clucked and moved aside when she approached, making her job easier. "You're a natural," Daniel said one morning as they walked back to the house. "Baskets full of fresh eggs." Sophia smiled. "I wouldn't go that far, but I'm getting better." In the afternoons, while Daniel worked the fields, Sophia took over the kitchen. She'd never been much of a cook in Boston. There was always takeout or restaurants, but here, with fresh ingredients from the garden, she found herself enjoying it. She learned to make bread from scratch, following an old recipe book she found in the kitchen drawer. Her first loaves were dense and slightly burned on the bottom, but Daniel ate them without complaint by the end of the second week. Her bread was coming out perfect golden brown with a crackly crust. The simple accomplishment gave her more satisfaction than any of the dinner parties she'd hosted in Boston one evening. As they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel broke their comfortable silence. Tomorrow's Saturday, market day in Riverdale. He glanced at her. I could use some help if you're interested. Sophia had been avoiding town, partly because she wasn't ready to meet new people, partly because she feared running into someone who might recognize her. The breakup had made some minor headlines in Boston, and she wasn't sure how far that news had traveled. But after 2 weeks of farm life, she was curious about the local town. I'd like that, she said. The next morning, they loaded Daniel's truck with crates of vegetables, eggs, and jars of honey from the beehives at the far end of the property. Sophia wore another of Daniel's flannel shirts, now washed and properly fitted by her own hand with some basic stitching. With her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and no makeup, she looked nothing like the polished society girlfriend she'd been in Boston. The farmers' market in Riverdale was smaller than Sophia had expected, just 24 stalls set up in the town square. But the atmosphere was lively, with locals chatting and shopping, children running between the stalls, and the smell of coffee and fresh-baked goods filling the air. Daniel's stall was simple but neat, with a hand-painted sign that read Willow Creek Farm. Sophia helped him arrange the produced tomatoes still warm from the sun, leafy greens, zucchini, peppers, and the golden honey that caught the morning light. You take the money, Daniel told her, handing her an old cash box. I'll talk to the customers about the produce. Sophia nodded, suddenly nervous. In Boston, she'd coordinated gallery openings for hundreds of people, but somehow, this simple task felt more intimidating. What if she messed up the change? What if no one bought anything? Her worries were unfounded. Daniel had regular customers who came straight to his stall, greeting him by name and eyeing Sophia with obvious curiosity. This is Sophia, Daniel explained, to Mrs. Peterson, an elderly woman who bought eggs every week. She's staying at the farm for a while. Elena Rivera's granddaughter. Mrs. Peterson's eyes lit up. Elena's granddaughter. Well, isn't that something? Your grandmother was a lovely woman. She made the best apple pies in the county. Throughout the morning, Sophia met more of the locals. Most of them had known her grandmother, and they shared small stories that made Elena come alive in a way that family photos never had. Sophia found herself smiling more than she had in months. During a quiet moment, Daniel went to get them coffee from a nearby stall. While he was gone, a stylishly dressed woman approached Willow Creek's table. She picked up a tomato, examining it critically. Is Daniel around? She asked, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp as she looked Sophia up and down. He just stepped away, Sophia replied. He'll be right back. Can I help you with anything? The woman put down the tomato. I'm Melissa Jensen. She said it like Sophia should recognize the name. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Melissa, Daniel's ex-fiancée who had left him for city life. Oh, she said, suddenly feeling awkward. I'm Sophia, so I've heard. Melissa replied with a tight smile. Word travels fast in small towns. Elena Rivera's granddaughter, staying out at Willow Creek. She leaned in slightly. Just between us girls, how long are you planning to stay? Daniel's a nice guy, but this place, ... She gestured around. It gets old fast. Before Sophia could respond, Daniel returned with 2 cups of coffee. He stopped short when he saw Melissa, his expression shuddering. Melissa, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Didn't expect to see you here. Melissa's whole demeanor changed. Her smile softened, and she reached out to touch Daniel's arm. I'm just back for a visit. Staying with my parents for the weekend. She glanced at Sophia, then back to Daniel. I thought maybe we could catch up, for old time's sake. Sophia felt a knot form in her stomach. She busied herself with rearranging the tomatoes, trying to give them privacy. I'm pretty busy with the farm, Daniel said, his voice still even, and I've got company this weekend. Melissa's smile faltered slightly. Right, well, I'm here until Sunday evening. Call me if you change your mind. She walked away without buying anything, her heels clicking on the pavement. Daniel handed Sophia her coffee without comment, but she could see the tension in his shoulders for the rest of the morning. He was quieter than usual. On the drive back to the farm, Sophia finally broke the silence. She seems ... nice. Daniel glanced at her, then back at the road. Melissa's not a bad person. We just wanted different things. She said she's staying until Sunday, Sophia said, trying to keep her voice casual. If you want to see her, don't let me get in the way. I can handle things at the farm. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I don't want to see her, he said firmly. That chapter of my life is closed. They drove in silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. Melissa thought she could change the farm, make it bigger, more commercial. When that didn't work, she tried to change me. He shook his head. Then she met some businessman from Chicago who promised her the city life she wanted, and she was gone. Sophia thought about Richard, about how he'd always tried to mold her into his idea of the perfect girlfriend, greeting her clothes, her friends, even the way she laughed. I understand, she said softly. My ex was the same way. He loved an idea of me, not the real me. Daniel glanced at her again, something warm in his eyes. His loss, he said simply. Back at the farm, they unloaded the truck in comfortable silence. The market had been successful. They'd sold almost everything they'd brought, and the cash box was full. Sophia counted out the money at the kitchen table. while Daniel put away the empty crates. "You were great today," he said, pouring them each a glass of iced tea. "People liked you." Sophia smiled, surprised by how much the simple compliment pleased her. "I liked them too. It was nice hearing stories about my grandmother that evening, instead of their usual quiet dinner." Daniel suggested they celebrate their successful market day with a bonfire by the creek. He grilled fresh corn and vegetables while Sophia made a salad with greens from the garden. They ate outside as the sun set, sitting on a blanket spread over the grass. As darkness fell, Daniel built up the fire. The flames cast a warm glow over their faces, and the creek gurgled softly nearby. Sophia had never felt so at peace. "Tell me something about you," Daniel said, leaning back on his elbows. "Something I don't know yet." Sophia thought for a moment. "I used to paint," she said finally. "In college, I was always covered in oil paints. I wanted to be an artist, but ... double quotes, but, Daniel prompted, "but my mother said it wasn't practical. The gallery job was the compromise." Sophia sighed. "I haven't painted in years." Richard thought it was messy and took up too much space in the apartment. Daniel was quiet for a moment. "There's an old shed behind the barn," he said finally. "It gets good light. It could be a studio if you wanted." Sophia looked at him, surprised by the offer. "I'm not staying forever," she reminded him, though the words felt less certain than they had 2 weeks ago. "I know," Daniel said. "But while you're here, you should do what makes you happy." Happy, such a simple word, but Sophia realized she hadn't truly been happy in a long time, not until coming to Willow Creek. The fire crackled between them as a comfortable silence fell. Sophia looked up at the night sky, amazed by the stars. In Boston, light pollution had hidden all but the brightest stars, but here, the Milky Way stretched across the darkness like spilled sugar. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yes," Daniel agreed, but when Sophia glanced over, he wasn't looking at the stars. He was looking at her. Their eyes met across the fire, and Sophia felt something shift between them, a recognition, a possibility. For a moment, she thought he might say something, might cross the space between them. Instead, he added another log to the fire and changed the subject. "What do you think about helping me plant some fall vegetables tomorrow? The kale and spinach need to go in if we want a good harvest before the first frost." Sophia nodded, ignoring the small pang of disappointment. "I'd like that." The next day, they worked side by side in the garden, planting rows of seedlings. Sophia's hands, once manicured and soft, were now calloused and dirt-stained. She found she didn't mind. There was something satisfying about working with the earth, about creating something with her hands. In the afternoon, Daniel took her to the shed behind the barn. He'd clearly been working on it. The space was clean, with a table set up near the window and an old easel in the corner. "It's not much," he said, suddenly seeming nervous, "but I thought you might like a space of your own." Sophia walked around the small shed, touching the easel, looking out the window at the view of the fields and distant hills. Emotion welled up in her throat. "No one's ever done something like this for me before," she said quietly. Daniel shrugged, looking embarrassed. "It's just a shed." But they both knew it was more than that. It was acknowledgement, support, belief in her that she'd never had from anyone else. That evening, after dinner, Sophia's phone rang. It had been quiet for days. Her mother and sister had finally stopped calling constantly. She checked the screen and felt her stomach drop. "Richard, I should take this," she said to Daniel, who nodded and began clearing the dinner dishes too. "Give her privacy." Sophia stepped out onto the porch and answered the call. "Hello, Richard." Sophia, finally. His voice was tight with controlled anger. "Do you have any idea what you've put me through? Your mother is worried sick." Sophia leaned against the porch railing, watching the fireflies begin to appear in the gathering dusk. "I'm fine, Richard. I just needed some space." "Space?" He laughed bitterly. "You left 2 weeks before our wedding without a word. Do you know how that makes me look?" And there it was. His concern wasn't for her well-being but for his reputation. "I'm sorry if I embarrassed you," she said, not feeling sorry at all. "But I found the texts. Richard, I know about the other women." "That was nothing," he dismissed, just blowing off steam before settling down. "It wouldn't have happened after we were married." Sophia closed her eyes, remembering Daniel's words from that first day. "I've never seen such pure beauty. Not her clothes, not her makeup, not the society girlfriend image she'd cultivated for years, just her, dusty and exhausted and real." "It's over, Richard," she said firmly. "I'm not coming back." "Where are you?" he demanded. "Your sister mentioned something about a farm." "This is ridiculous, Sophia. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Come home." "I am home," Sophia replied, surprising herself with the truth of it. "Goodbye, Richard." She hung up before he could respond and turned off her phone. When she went back inside, Daniel was washing dishes at the sink, his back to her. He didn't ask about the call, and she was grateful for his respect for her privacy. "Need help?" she asked, picking up a dish towel. He handed her a wet plate. "Everything okay?" Sophia dried the plate carefully before answering. "It will be said finally. "That was Richard, my ex. He wants me to come back." Daniel's hand stilled in the soapy water. "Are you going to?" His voice was carefully neutral. Sophia met his eyes. "No," she said simply. "I'm exactly where I need to be right now." The relief in Daniel's eyes was unmistakable. though he tried to hide it. "Good," he said softly. "I mean, I'm glad you're staying." For now, Sophia agreed, though in her heart, she was beginning to wonder if her now might stretch into something much longer. The next morning, Sophia woke early and walked down to the creek alone. The water was cool and clear, bubbling over smooth stones. On impulse, she took off her shoes and waded in, gasping at the cold but enjoying the feeling of the creek bed beneath her feet. This place was healing her, she realized. Not just from Richard's betrayal, but from years of trying to be someone she wasn't. Here, covered in garden dirt and cooking simple meals, she felt more herself than she had in a very long time. When she returned to the house, Daniel was in the kitchen making coffee. He looked up when she entered, his eyes taking in her wet feet and the hem of her jeans darkened with creek water. "Morning swim?" he asked, smiling. "Just waiting," she replied, accepting the mug of coffee he offered. "It's beautiful down there this early." They fell into their morning routine breakfast, feeding the chickens, watering the garden. But something had shifted between them. There were moments when their hands would brush, and neither would pull away. Glances that lingered a beat, long words that carried more meaning than their simple surface. In the afternoon, Sophia went to the shed-turned studio. Daniel had left art supplies on the table, basic paints, brushes, and a stack of canvases. Nothing fancy, but enough to start. A note beside them read simply, "For whenever you're ready." Sophia touched the brushes, feeling a long dormant excitement stir within her. She set up a canvas on the easel and looked out the window at the view-rolling hills, the creek winding through green fields, the big willow tree that gave the farm its name. She began to paint, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. Hours passed unnoticed as she lost herself in the work. She didn't hear Daniel approach, didn't know he was there until he spoke from the doorway. "That's beautiful," he said quietly. Sophia turned, suddenly self-conscious. The painting was still, rough, just the basic shapes and colors of the landscape, with the willow tree as the focal point. "It's not finished," she said. "It's still beautiful," Daniel insisted, coming to stand beside her. Like the artist, Sophia felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. In Boston, compliments had always felt calculated, designed to get something in return. Daniel's simple words held nothing but sincerity. "Thank you," she said softly, "for all of this. For letting me stay, for the studio, for everything." Daniel looked at her, his eyes serious. "I'm glad you're here, Sophia." His hand moved as if to touch her face, then hesitated. "I should let you get back to your painting," he said, stepping away. "Dinner in an hour." Sophia nodded, feeling a mixture of disappointment and anticipation. Something was building between them, something neither was quite ready to name. That night, after dinner, they sat on the porch swing, watching the stars come out. Sophia was acutely aware of Daniel beside her, of the warmth of his arm just inches from hers, of the gentle rhythm of the swing. "My grandmother loved this place," Sophia said into the comfortable silence. "In her letters, she always said it was where she felt most at peace. I understand that now." Daniel turned to look at her, his face half in shadow. "And when you go back to Boston, will you miss it?" Sophia met his gaze. "I'm not sure I am going back," she admitted. "There's nothing for me there anymore." "And here?" Daniel asked, his voice low. "What's here for you?" The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Sophia thought about the past 3 weeks, the simple routines, the honest work, the way she'd begun to find herself again in this place, and Daniel, whose quiet strength and kindness had helped her heal in ways she hadn't known she needed. "Peace," she said finally. "Purpose. A chance to be myself, not someone else's idea of who I should be." She paused, gathering her courage. "And you're here." Daniel's hand found hers on the swing between them, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "I want you to stay," he said simply. "Not just for now, but I don't want to be the reason you stay, if that makes sense. I want you to choose this life because it's what you want." Sophia squeezed his hand. "I think I am choosing it," she said softly, day by day. Their eyes met in the darkness, and this time, when Daniel leaned toward her, he didn't pull back. His lips found hers in a gentle kiss that felt like coming home. Sophia had been kissed before, passionate, demanding kisses from Richard that always seemed to be leading somewhere, usually to his bedroom. This was different. Daniel's kiss held no demand, only tenderness and a question. When they broke apart, Sophia rested her forehead against his. "I've never been kissed like that before," she whispered. "Like what?" Daniel asked, his voice rough. "Like I'm something precious," Sophia replied. "Like I'm worth waiting for." Daniel brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You are," he said simply. "Worth waiting for, worth knowing, worth loving." Sophia, the word loving hung in the air between them, neither ready to examine it too closely yet. Instead, they sat together on the porch swing, hands intertwined, watching the stars and feeling the first delicate threads of something that might, with time and care, grow into something beautiful and lasting. What neither of them knew was that their newfound peace was about to be tested. In Boston, Richard Prescott was making plans. He wasn't a man who accepted being left, especially not for a simple farmer and a quiet life. He couldn't begin to understand. Sophia woke to the sound of rain tapping gently against her window. It had been a month since she first arrived at Willow Creek Farm, a month of simple pleasures and growing feelings. She stretched in bed, listening to the soothing rhythm of the raindrops and thinking about the kiss she and Daniel had shared the night before. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it reluctantly, expecting another angry message from her mother or sister. Instead, it was an email notification from her old boss at the gallery in Boston. Sophia, hope you're well. Just checking if you plan to return to your position. We've held it for you, but we need to know by the end of the week. Best. Marcus. Sophia stared at the screen. The gallery job had been her anchor in Boston, the one thing that was truly hers. A month ago, she would have jumped at the chance to keep it. Now, she wasn't so sure. She set the phone down and got dressed, pulling on jeans and one of Daniel's flannel shirts that she'd adopted as her own. When she went downstairs, Daniel was already in the kitchen making pancakes. Morning, he said, smiling when he saw her. There was a new warmth in his eyes that made Sophia's heart beat faster. I thought we deserved a special breakfast since we can't work outside in this rain. Sophia poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter beside him. I got an email from my old job, she said. They want to know if I'm coming back. Daniel's hand stilled for a moment as he flipped a pancake. Oh, he said, his voice carefully neutral. And are you going back? Sophia took a sip of coffee. I don't know, she admitted. A month ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now, ... Daniel turned to face her, his expression serious. Sophia, I meant what I said last night. I want you to stay, but I also want you to be sure it's what you want. I don't want you to wake up 6 months from now and resent me for keeping you from your life in Boston. Sophia set down her coffee cup and stepped closer to him. What if this is my life now? She asked softly. What if this is where I belong? Daniel's eyes searched hers. Is it? Before Sophia could answer, the phone rang. Daniel reluctantly turned away to answer it. Hello? His expression changed as he listened. Yes, she's here. Who's asking? He frowned. I see. Just a moment. He held out the phone to Sophia. It's for you. Someone named Richard Prescott. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. Richard was calling the farmhouse. How had he even gotten the number? She took the phone with a shaking hand. Hello, Sophia. Richard's voice was smooth, controlled his business voice. I'm in Riverdale. We need to talk. Sophia gripped the phone tighter. How did you find me? How did you get this number? Does it matter? I hired someone. It wasn't difficult. His tone was dismissive. I've taken a room at the Riverdale Inn. I'll expect you for lunch at noon. Sophia's temper flared. You'll expect me? I'm not coming, Richard. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Richard spoke again, his voice was softer, almost contrite. Please, Sophia. I've come all this way. Just hear me out. Then, if you still want me to leave, I will. Sophia looked at Daniel, who was pretending to focus on the pancakes but was clearly listening to every word. Fine, she said finally. 1 hour, that's all you get. I'll send a car for you, Richard replied. No, Sophia said firmly. I'll drive myself. She hung up without waiting for his response. Daniel turned to face her, his expression guarded. So he found you? Sophia nodded, feeling suddenly sick. He's in Riverdale. Wants to meet for lunch. She wrapped her arms around herself. I told him I'd go. Just to hear him out. To get him to leave. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Do you want me to come with you? The offer touched Sophia deeply. No, she said gently. This is something I need to do alone. She stepped closer to him. But thank you for offering. Daniel nodded, but she could see the worry in his eyes. Just come back. Okay. Sophia reached up to touch his face. I will, she promised. This is my home now. The drive to Riverdale. We felt longer than usual. Sophia borrowed Daniel's truck, feeling strange to be alone after weeks of his constant companionship. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time she pulled into the parking lot of the Riverdale Inn, a small but elegant hotel that catered to the occasional business traveler. Richard was waiting in the lobby, looking as polished as ever in an expensive suit that seemed wildly out of place in the small town. When he saw Sophia in jeans, work boots, and Daniel's flannel shirt, his eyebrows rose. Sophia, he said, stepping forward to kiss her cheek. She turned her head slightly so his lips barely grazed her skin. You look ... different. I am different, she replied simply. He led her to the hotel restaurant where he'd reserved a private table in the corner. Always image conscious even here, Sophia thought. I took the liberty of ordering for us, Richard said as they sat down. The menu here is rather limited. Sophia felt a flicker of irritation. Richard had always ordered for her, choosing what he thought she should eat rather than asking what she wanted. It had seemed romantic once. Now it just felt controlling. So, she said, folding her hands on the table. You've come all this way. What do you want, Richard? He studied her face. You look well, he said, ignoring her question. Country air agrees with you, apparently, Richard. Sophia pressed. Why are you here? He sighed, reaching across the table for her hand. She pulled back before he could touch her. I'm here because you're my fiancé, he said. Because we're supposed to be married in 1 week. Because your family is worried sick about you. Ex-fiancé, Sophia corrected. I broke the engagement when I found out you were cheating on me. Richard had the grace to look slightly abashed. I made mistakes, he admitted. I was under a lot of pressure with the merger at work, planning the wedding. I sought comfort where I shouldn't have. 3 different women, Richard Sophia said flatly. That's not seeking comfort. That's not caring whether you hurt me. I care, he insisted. Why do you think I'm here? I've postponed all my meetings, left the office, in chaos, just to find you and bring you home. Sophia looked at him, really looked at him. In Boston, she'd thought Richard was everything she wanted. Handsome, successful, charming when he wanted to be. Now she saw the calculation behind his smile, the impatience in his eyes. This isn't about me, she realized aloud. This is about you, your image, your plans. Richard's expression hardened. Don't be dramatic, Sophia. Of course it's about you. I love you, do you? Sophia asked. Or do you love the idea of me, the perfect society wife who looks good on your arm and never causes problems? The waiter arrived with their food, salmon for her, steak for him, exactly what Richard always ordered for them. Sophia didn't touch her plate. I've met someone, she said quietly. Richard's fork clattered against his plate. The farmer. You can't be serious. His name is Daniel, said, her voice strengthening. And yes, I'm serious about him, about this place. I'm happy here, Richard. Happier than I ever was in Boston. Richard laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're telling me you'd rather live on some rundown farm with a man who probably makes in a year what I make in a day? That you'd rather collect eggs and grow vegetables than host dinner parties for the most influential people in Boston? Yes, Sophia said simply. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Richard's face flushed with anger. This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown. First you run away, now you think you're in love with some hick farmer. Don't call him that, Sophia interrupted, her own anger rising. Daniel is twice the man you'll ever be. He sees me, Richard, the real me, not some trophy to show off. And what does the real Sophia want? Richard asked, his tone mocking. To waste her education and background playing farmer's wife. To throw away every opportunity and connection I gave her. Sophia stood up, dropping her napkin on her untouched plate. The real Sophia wants to be valued for who she is, not what she represents. The real Sophia wants to paint again, to create, to live simply and honestly. She looked down at him. The real Sophia wants Daniel, not you. She turned to leave, but Richard grabbed her wrist. This isn't over, he said, his voice low. You're making a mistake, Sophia, one you'll regret. Sophia pulled her arm free. The only mistake I made was staying with you as long as I did, she said. Goodbye, Richard. She walked out of the restaurant with her head high, ignoring the curious stares of the other diners. Once in Daniel's truck, she took a deep breath, feeling shaky but strangely elated. It was done. She had faced Richard and chosen her new life without hesitation. The rain had stopped by the time Sophia returned to Willow Creek Farm. Daniel was in the barn working on the tractor, but he looked up the moment she walked in. His face showed both relief and apprehension. You're back, he said, wiping his hands on a rag. I told you I would be, Sophia replied. She crossed the barn to stand in front of him. Richard wanted me to go back to Boston with him. Daniel's expression remained carefully neutral. And what did you tell him? I told him no, Sophia said simply. I told him I was happy here, with you. The tension visibly drained from Daniel's shoulders. He reached for her, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home. Sophia buried her face against his chest, breathing in the familiar smell of earth and engine oil and something uniquely Daniel. I was afraid, he admitted, his voice rough. Afraid you'd remember everything you left behind and realize it was what you wanted after all. Sophia pulled back to look up at him. What I left behind was a life where I was never enough as myself, where I was always trying to be what someone else wanted. She touched his face gently. Here, with you, I'm just Sophia, and that's enough. Daniel's eyes were suspiciously bright as he bent to kiss her. Unlike their first kiss, tentative and questioning, this one was full of certainty. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. I love you, Daniel said simply. I think I've loved you since the day you showed up at my fence looking like you'd walked through hell to get here. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. I love you too, she whispered. That evening they sat on the porch, watching the sunset break through the clouds after the rain. Sophia's head rested on Daniel's shoulder, their fingers intertwined. I got an email from my old boss today, Sophia said. He wants to know if I'm coming back to the gallery. Daniel's hand tightened slightly on hers. And what are you going to tell him? Sophia looked out at the farm, the fields they'd worked together, the creek where they'd shared secrets, the old shed where she was painting again for the first time in years. I'm going to tell him no, she said, but I've been thinking. There's no art gallery in Riverdale. Maybe there should be. A small one, showing local artists. Maybe some of my own work eventually. Daniel turned to look at her, his eyes warm. You'd be amazing at that. The building next to the bakery is for rent, Sophia continued, warming to the idea. It's small, but it has good light. I could fix it up. Use some of my savings, our savings, Daniel corrected gently. If you're staying, what's mine is yours. Sophia felt a rush of emotion at his words. Are you sure? I mean, we haven't known each other that long. Daniel laughed softly. Sometimes you just know, he said. My dad proposed to my mom after 3 weeks. They were married for 40 years, until she died. Sophia leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body. My grandmother would have loved you, she said. I wish I could have met her, Daniel replied. She must have been something special to have a granddaughter like you. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. Sophia felt a peace she'd never known before, a certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Next morning, Sophia woke early and went down to the kitchen to start coffee. To her surprise, Daniel was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a serious expression. What's wrong? She asked, immediately concerned. Daniel held up a piece of paper. This was taped to the front door when I went out to feed the chickens. Sophia took the paper, a sense of dread growing as she recognized Richard's handwriting. Sophia, I don't accept your decision. You're not thinking clearly. I'm staying in Riverdale until you come to your senses. I've spoken with your mother, and she agrees with me that you need to come home immediately. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Richard. Sophia crumpled the paper, anger rising in her chest. He doesn't give up, does he? Daniel's expression was grim. Did something happen yesterday that you didn't tell me about? Did he threaten you? Sophia shook her head. Not directly. He just said I'd regret my choice. She tossed the crumpled note into the trash. He can't force me to go anywhere. I'm a grown woman. I don't like that he came here, Daniel said, standing up. That he knows where we live. The we wasn't lost. On Sophia, this was their home now, not just Daniel's. I'll handle Richard, she said firmly. He's all talk. Once he realizes I'm serious, he'll go back to Boston and find someone else to be his perfect society wife. But Daniel didn't look convinced. Just be careful, okay? Men like that, men who are used to getting what they want, they can be unpredictable when they're rejected. Sophia stepped into his arms, resting her head against his chest. I'll be careful, she promised, but I'm not letting Richard chase me away from the life I want. From you, they tried to go about their day, normally working in the garden, feeding the animals, preparing for the next farmer's market. But Richard's note had cast a shadow over the farm. Sophia found herself glancing toward the road whenever she heard a car, half expecting to see Richard's sleek BMW coming up the drive. In the afternoon, Sophia drove into town to look at the vacant storefront next to the bakery. The space was small but charming, with large front windows and original hardwood floors. As she peered through the windows, imagining how she could transform it into a gallery, someone called her name Sophia. She turned to see Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman from the farmer's market, walking toward her. Hello, Mrs. Peterson, Sophia said, smiling. Call me Martha, dear. Everyone does. The older woman looked at the vacant storefront. Are you thinking of opening a business? Sophia nodded. Maybe a small art gallery. It's just an idea right now. Martha's face lit up. Oh, that would be wonderful. Riverdale could use some culture. You know, your grandmother was quite the artist herself. Sophia blinked in surprise. She was. I didn't know that. Oh my. Yes, Elena painted the most beautiful landscapes. She donated several to the library before she moved away. Martha patted Sophia's arm. You should go see them. They're still hanging in the reading room. Sophia thanked her and immediately headed to the small library at the end of Main Street. Inside, she asked the librarian about her grandmother's paintings and was directed to the reading room at the back of the building. There, hanging on the wall, were 3 landscapes views of Willow Creek Farm as it had been years ago. Sophia stood before them, tears filling her eyes. The brushstrokes, the use of light, the way the willow tree dominated the composition. It was like looking at her own work, only more mature, more confident. She'd never known this about her grandmother. Her mother rarely spoke of Elena, and when she did, it was always with a hint of disapproval for the woman who had chosen to leave Boston for a simpler life in the country. Now Sophia understood why her mother had been afraid. Sophia would follow in Elena's footsteps, and she had. As Sophia drove back to the farm, she felt a new connection to her grandmother, a sense that her path had been set long before she ever came to Willow Creek. Daniel was waiting on the porch when she returned, his face grave. Richard was here, he said as soon as she got out of the truck. Sophia froze. What did he want? To buy the farm, Daniel said, his voice tight with anger. He offered me twice what it's worth if I'd sell it and free you from this ridiculous fantasy, as he put it. Sophia felt sick. What did you tell him? I told him the farm wasn't for sale at any price, Daniel replied, and that you weren't property to be bought and sold. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Sophia had come to recognize as a sign of distress. He didn't take it well. Said I was ruining your life by keeping you here. Sophia closed the distance between them, taking Daniel's hands in hers. You're not ruining my life, she said fiercely. You're saving it. I've never been happier than I am here with you. Daniel's eyes searched hers. Are you sure? Because if there's any part of you that wants to go back. Sophia silenced him with a kiss. I'm sure, she said when they broke apart. I went to the library today. Did you know my grandmother was an artist? Her paintings are hanging there, landscapes of this farm. Daniel looked surprised. I didn't know that. Neither did I, Sophia said. But looking at her work, I could feel the connection. She loved this place the same way I do. She squeezed his hands. The same way I love you. Daniel pulled her close. I'll never let Richard or anyone else take you away, he promised. Not unless it's what you want. It will never be what I want, Sophia assured him. That night, they made love for the first time, their bodies finding the same easy harmony as their hearts. Afterward, lying in Daniel's arms, Sophia felt a completeness she'd never known was possible. I want to marry you, Daniel whispered into the darkness. Not right away. When you're ready. But I want you to know, that's what I want. Sophia turned in his arms to face him, even though she could barely make out his features in the dim light. I want that too, she said softly. More than I've ever wanted anything. The next morning, Sophia woke to the sound of Daniel's phone ringing. He answered it groggily, then sat up straight, suddenly alert. When he asked, his voice sharp, how bad? He listened for a moment. I'll be right there. He hung up and jumped out of bed, pulling on his clothes. What's wrong? Sophia asked. Alarmed. Fire at the Henderson place, Daniel said grimly. Old barn's gone up. They're calling everyone in to help before it spreads to the house. Sophia got out of bed, reaching for her clothes. I'm coming with you. The Henderson farm was only a few miles away. As they drove, they could see the smoke rising into the clear morning sky. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. Volunteer firefighters struggling with hoses, neighbors forming bucket chains, children and animals herded to safety. Daniel immediately joined a group of men trying to prevent the fire from spreading to the farmhouse. Sophia found Mrs. Henderson, a woman in her 60s, sitting on a lawn chair with a blanket around her shoulders, watching her husband's family barn burn with tears streaming down her face. Is there anything I can do? Sophia asked, sitting beside the older woman. Mrs. Henderson shook her head. Not unless you can turn back time, dear. That barn's been standing for 100 years. She wiped her eyes. At least everyone's safe. That's what matters. For hours, the community worked together to fight the fire. By mid-afternoon, it was finally under control, though the barn was a total loss. The farmhouse, fortunately, had been spared. Daniel was covered in soot, his clothes singed in places. When he finally found Sophia helping distribute water and sandwiches to the exhausted volunteers, it's mostly out, he told her, accepting a bottle of water. Just keeping an eye on the hotspots now. Do they know what caused it? Sophia asked. Daniel shook his head. Old wiring, maybe. These historic barns can be fire traps. He took a long drink of water. I'm going to help them clean up a bit, then we can head home. Sophia nodded. I'll stay and help too. As they worked alongside their neighbors, Sophia was struck by the sense of community. In Boston, she'd barely known the people who lived in her building. Here, everyone came together in a crisis, no questions asked. It was late afternoon when they finally headed back to Willow Creek. Both were exhausted, dirty, and smelling of smoke. All Sophia wanted was a hot shower and a quiet evening with Daniel. But as they turned into the farm's driveway, they saw a sleek black car parked in front of the house. Richard's car. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What's he doing? Here they pulled up beside Richard's car and got out. The house seemed quiet. No sign of Richard outside. Maybe he left the car and went into town, Sophia suggested, though she didn't believe it. Daniel shook his head. Stay here, he said, moving toward the house. But Sophia followed, unwilling to let him face Richard alone. They entered the house together, calling out, but there was no response. Check upstairs, Daniel said. I'll look out back. Sophia headed upstairs, checking each room, but found no sign of Richard. When she came back down, Daniel was standing in the kitchen, his face pale. What's wrong? She asked. The shed, he said. Your studio. Sophia rushed out the back door. Daniel closed behind her. As they approached the shed behind the barn, she could see immediately that something was wrong. The door was open, swinging slightly in the breeze. Inside, destruction greeted them. Her paintings, weeks of work, landscapes of the farm and portraits of Daniel had been slashed, the canvases hanging in tatters from their frames. Art supplies were scattered across the floor, paint splattered on the walls. On the center of the floor lay her grandmother's letters, torn to pieces. Sophia stood frozen in shock, unable to process the deliberate cruelty of the destruction. These weren't just possessions, they were pieces of her soul, her connection to her grandmother, her new life with Daniel. Richard, she whispered, her voice breaking. He did this. Daniel put his arms around her, holding her as she began to cry. I'm so sorry, Sophia, he murmured into her hair. I'm so sorry. Through her tears, Sophia noticed something else, a note pinned to the easel with a pocket knife. Daniel saw it too and reached for it, his hand shaking with barely controlled rage. The note was short. Come home, Sophia. This isn't over. Daniel crumpled the note in his fist. I'm calling the sheriff, he said, his voice tight. This is destruction of property, trespassing, threatening behavior. Sophia nodded numbly, still looking at the ruins of her work. Something hard and determined settled in her chest, replacing the shock and grief. Richard thought he could frighten her into returning to him. He thought destroying her art would break her spirit. He was wrong. Call the sheriff, she agreed, her voice steadier. Richard needs to understand I'm never going back. Not to Boston, not to him. This is my home now, with you. Daniel looked down at her, his eyes filled with love and concern. Are you sure? After this, I'm more sure than ever, Sophia said firmly. Richard can destroy my paintings, but he can't destroy what I feel for you, or for this place. She looked around at the ruined studio. I'll start over, I'll paint it all again. Better than before. Daniel pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. I love you, he said, and I promise you, Richard won't get away with this. As they stood among the ruins of Sophia's studio, holding each other, neither knew that this was just the beginning of Richard's campaign to reclaim what he saw as his. The battle for Sophia's future and for Willow Creek Farm itself was only just beginning. Sheriff Mike Roberts stood in the ruined studio, taking notes as Daniel and Sophia explained what had happened. A heavy-set man in his 50s with a salt-and-pepper mustache. The sheriff had known Daniel since he was a boy. And you're sure it was this Richard Prescott fellow? He asked, looking up from his notepad. Sophia nodded. The note is in his handwriting, and his car was here when we got back from the Henderson fire. I'll drive over to the Riverdale Inn and have a talk with him, Sheriff Roberts said, pocketing his notepad. This is criminal damage to property, plus trespassing and harassment. We don't tolerate that kind of behavior around here, no matter how rich or important someone thinks they are. After the sheriff left, Daniel and Sophia began the painful task of cleaning up the studio. Most of the paintings were beyond saving, slashed with what must have been a knife or box cutter. Sophia gathered the scraps of her grandmother's letters, hoping she might be able to piece them back together. I'm so sorry, Sophia, Daniel said as they worked. I should have been here to protect your things. Sophia shook her head. You were helping the Hendersons. We both were. That's what matters. She looked around at the destruction. Besides, I can paint more pictures. I can't replace people. Despite her brave words, Sophia felt sick at the deliberate cruelty of Richard's actions. This wasn't just anger, this was calculated to hurt her where it would cut deepest. He had always known how much her art meant to her, even if he'd never supported it. That evening, Sheriff Roberts called to report that Richard had checked out of the Riverdale Inn shortly after noon. My deputy tracked his credit card, the sheriff explained. He bought gas at the station on the highway, heading east. Looks like he's on his way back to Boston. So that's it? Daniel asked. He destroys Sophia's studio and just leaves. I've filed a report, the sheriff said. And I've got a buddy with the Boston PD who will pay Mr. Prescott a visit. Let him know charges have been filed. But unless he comes back, there's not much more we can do right now. After hanging up, Daniel turned to Sophia. Are you okay? Really, Sophia sighed, sitting down on the couch. I'm angry and hurt, but mostly I'm just tired. Tired of Richard thinking he can control my life, even from hundreds of miles away. Daniel sat beside her, taking her hand. You know this probably isn't over, right? Men like Richard don't give up easily. I know, Sophia admitted, but neither do I. Over the next few days, they repaired the studio as best they could. Daniel replaced the broken window and fixed the door, which Richard had forced open. Sophia ordered new canvases and paints to replace what had been destroyed. Slowly, the small space began to feel like hers again, but Richard's attack had left a shadow over Willow Creek. Sophia found herself looking over her shoulder, jumping at unexpected sounds. Daniel installed new locks on all the doors and set up security lights around the property. The peace they had found together felt fragile now, threatened by the man who couldn't accept that Sophia had chosen a different life. A week after the incident, Sophia's phone rang. It was her sister Kate Sophia. What on earth is going on? Kate demanded, without preamble. Richard came back to Boston saying you've lost your mind, that you're shacking up with some farmer and refusing to come home. Mom is beside herself. Sophia sighed, stepping out onto the porch for privacy. Richard broke into Daniel's property and destroyed my paintings. Kate, he left a threatening note. Is that the behavior of someone who loves me? There was silence on the other end of the line. He did what? Kate finally asked, her voice quieter. You heard me, Sophia said. The local sheriff has filed charges. I didn't know, Kate said slowly. Richard just said you were being stubborn, that you needed family intervention. Well, now you know, Sophia replied. I'm not coming back, Kate. I'm happy here. I'm in love with Daniel. We're talking about getting married. Another long pause. Married, Sophia. You've known this man for what? A month? This isn't like you. Maybe it's exactly like me, Sophia countered. The real me, not the version I pretended to be in Boston to make everyone else happy. Kate sighed. Mom wants to come there, to see you, to talk some sense into you. Sophia tensed. Her relationship with her mother had always been strained. Eleanor Rivera had worked hard to establish herself in Boston society after her own mother. Alina had abandoned it for country life. Sophia's choice to follow in her grandmother's footsteps felt like a personal betrayal to Eleanor. She can come if she wants, Sophia said finally, but she needs to understand that I'm not changing my mind. This is my home now. Daniel is my future. After hanging up, Sophia sat on the porch steps, feeling drained. The conversation with Kate had brought Boston crashing back into her consciousness, the expectations, the judgment, the constant pressure to be someone she wasn't. Daniel found her there, staring out at the fields. Without a word, he sat beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. My mother wants to come here, Sophia told him, to talk some sense into me, according to my sister. Daniel tightened his arm around her. And how do you feel about that? Sophia leaned into him. Honestly, I'm dreading it. My mother has never approved of anything I've done. She certainly won't approve of this. She gestured to the farm, to the simple life they were building together. Maybe seeing you happy will change her mind, Daniel suggested gently. Sophia smiled at his optimism. You don't know my mother. 2 days later, a sleek rental car pulled into the driveway of Willow Creek Farm. Eleanor Rivera stepped out, looking as out of place as a peacock in a chicken coop. At 55, she was still strikingly beautiful, with the same dark hair as Sophia, though hers was carefully colored to hide any gray. Her designer suit and high heels were completely impractical for a farm visit. Sophia stood on the porch watching her mother take in the old farmhouse, the fields beyond, the chickens pecking in the yard. Eleanor's disapproval was evident in every line of her body. Hello, Mother, Sophia called, walking down the porch steps to greet her. Eleanor air-kissed both of Sophia's cheeks. Darling, she said, her voice cool. You look rustic. Sophia bit back a sharp reply. How was your drive from the airport? Long, Eleanor said. And dusty. Is there somewhere I can freshen up before we talk? Sophia led her mother inside, acutely aware of Eleanor's critical gaze sweeping over the simple farmhouse furnishings. She showed her to the guest bathroom, then waited in the kitchen, preparing herself for the inevitable confrontation. Daniel had tactfully made himself scarce, working in the fields to give Sophia space for this family reunion, but he'd promised to be back for dinner. She should meet the man you're choosing over Richard, he'd said. The real me, not whatever version Richard has painted for her. Eleanor emerged from the bathroom looking refreshed but no less disapproving. Well, she said, accepting the glass of iced tea Sophia offered. I suppose we should discuss your situation. Sophia sat across from her mother at the kitchen table. My situation is that I'm happy, Mother. Happier than I've ever been. Eleanor sipped her tea. Richard tells a story. He says you're having some sort of breakdown, hiding away here after humiliating him by breaking your engagement. Richard broke into this property and destroyed my paintings, Sophia replied evenly. He left a threatening note. The sheriff has filed charges. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly, the closest she ever came to showing surprise. Richard didn't mention that part. I'm sure he didn't, Sophia said, just like he probably didn't mention that he was cheating on me with multiple women while we were engaged. Men have indiscretions, Eleanor said carefully. Especially powerful men like Richard. It doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Sophia stared at her mother in disbelief. Are you seriously defending his cheating? Would you have wanted me to marry him knowing he'd continue to have indiscretions throughout our marriage? Eleanor set down her glass. I wanted you to have security, position. The life I worked so hard to give you after your father left us with nothing. The life you wanted, Sophia corrected, not the one I chose. They were at an impasse, mother and daughter looking at each other across a divide. That seemed unbridgeable. Finally, Eleanor sighed. You're just like her, you know, she said, an unexpected note of sadness in her voice. Your grandmother Elena always chose her own path, no matter who it hurt. Sophia frowned. What do you mean? Eleanor waved a hand. Dismissively, it doesn't matter now. Ancient history. She looked around the kitchen. So this is where you want to live? In my mother's old house, with some farmer you barely know. His name is Daniel, Sophia said firmly. And yes, this is where I want to be. It feels right. Mother, it feels like where I belong. Eleanor studied her daughter's face. You really believe that, don't you? I do, Sophia said simply. Before Eleanor could respond, the back door opened and Daniel came in. He'd clearly made an effort to clean up after working in the fields. His clothes were changed, his hair damped from a quick shower. Mrs. Rivera, he said, crossing to offer his hand. I'm Daniel Carter. It's good to meet you. Eleanor took his hand briefly, her eyes assessing him with the cool calculation Sophia knew. So well, Mr. Carter, I understand you've been housing my daughter. Daniel didn't rise to the bait. Sophia is welcome here for as long as she wants to stay, he said calmly. Which I hope will be forever. Eleanor's eyebrows rose at his directness. Forever is a very long time, Mr. Carter, especially for someone used to the conveniences and culture of city life, Mother Sophia warned, but Daniel just smiled. Why don't I show you around the farm before dinner? You can see what we're building here. To Sophia's surprise, Eleanor agreed. She watched from the porch as Daniel led her mother around the property, pointing out the gardens, the orchard, the creek beyond. Even in her impractical shoes, Eleanor followed, listening as Daniel explained his vision for Willow Creek's future. By the time they returned, Sophia had dinner ready, a simple meal of roast chicken, vegetables from the garden, and fresh bread she'd baked that morning. Eleanor looked thoughtful as she sat down at the table. You made all this? She asked Sophia. As they began to eat, Sophia nodded. I've learned a lot since coming here. It's very good, Eleanor admitted, sounding almost surprised. During dinner, Daniel talked about his plans for expanding the farm's production, for selling at more markets, for growing the business. He was articulate and knowledgeable, his passion for the land evident in every word. Sophia could see her mother's perception of him shifting, from some farmer to a man with vision and purpose. After the meal, Daniel excused himself to finish some chores, leaving Sophia alone with her mother. Again, he's not what I expected, Eleanor conceded as they cleared the dishes. What did you expect? Sophia asked. Eleanor shrugged. Someone less substantial, I suppose. The way Richard described him. Richard doesn't know Daniel, Sophia interrupted. He just sees a farmer, someone he considers beneath him. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother would have approved, she said finally, of Daniel, of what you're doing here. Sophia stopped a plate in her hand. You never talk about Grandma Elena. Eleanor sighed, sitting back down at the table. We didn't part on good terms, her grandmother and I, when she left Boston, left the life she'd built with my father. I felt abandoned. I was 19, just starting college. She sold our house, bought this farm and moved away. Said she needed to find herself. Sophia sat across from her mother, seeing vulnerability in Eleanor's face that she'd never noticed before. I didn't know that. She asked me to come with her, Eleanor continued. Said we could start fresh here. But I was angry. I stayed in Boston, married your father, tried to rebuild the life she'd walked away from. She looked around the kitchen. I never came here, not once. Even when she was dying, I stayed away. Sophia reached for her mother's hand. I'm sorry, Mom. Eleanor squeezed her fingers briefly, then withdrew. The point is, I understand why you're here better than you might think, but I also know the costs of walking away from the life you've built. It's not easy and it hurts the people who love you. I'm not walking away from the people I love, Sophia said gently. Just from a life that was making me unhappy. There's a difference. Eleanor nodded slowly. Perhaps she straightened in her chair, her moment of vulnerability passing. Well, I've seen what I came to see. You're clearly not being held against your will, as Richard implied. Sophia rolled her eyes. Of course not. And this Daniel seems decent, Eleanor continued, though I still think you're rushing things. I love him, Mum, Sophia said simply, and he loves me. Not the idea of me, not what I represent, but the real me. Eleanor studied her daughter's face. I can see that, she admitted. But Sophia, you're sure this is what you want? This life is so different from everything you've known. I'm sure, Sophia said without hesitation. More sure than I've ever been about anything. That night, Eleanor stayed in the guest room that had been Sophia's when she first arrived. Sophia slept in Daniel's room, now their shared bedroom. As they lay together in the darkness, Daniel asked, How are you doing? Really, Sophia nestled against him. Better than I expected. My mother actually listened. That's new. She loves you, Daniel said. In her own way. I know, Sophia sighed. She just has a very fixed idea of what my life should be. Daniel kissed the top of her head. And what do you think your life should be? Sophia smiled in the darkness. This, she said simply. With you, on this farm, creating something meaningful together. The next morning, Eleanor was packed and ready to leave by 9. As Daniel loaded her suitcase into her rental car, she turned to Sophia on the porch. I can't say I fully understand your choice, she said, her voice softer than usual, but you seem at peace here, in a way I haven't seen before. Sophia blinked back unexpected tears. I am, Mom, I really am. Eleanor nodded. Then I won't try to change your mind, but please, be careful with Richard. He's not taking this well. Has he said something to you? Sophia asked, suddenly alert. Eleanor hesitated, not directly, but I've known men like Richard all my life. They don't accept losing, especially not to someone they consider beneath them. Sophia felt a chill despite the warm morning. We'll be careful, she promised. After Eleanor left, Sophia and Daniel resumed their normal routine, but with a new wariness. Richard's destruction of the studio and Eleanor's warning had put them on edge. Sheriff Roberts increased patrols past the farm, but days passed with no sign of Richard. Slowly, Sophia began to hope that perhaps he had finally accepted her decision. She threw herself into rebuilding her life, repainting the works that had been destroyed, helping Daniel with the farm, and looking into renting the space in town for her gallery. One afternoon, while Daniel was at the farmer's market in Riverdale, Sophia was alone at the farm working in her studio. She had just finished a new painting of the willow tree by the creek when she heard a car coming up the driveway. Thinking it was Daniel returning early, she stepped outside. Instead, a black SUV she didn't recognize pulled up. 2 men in suits got out, looking completely out of place on the farm. Sophia Rivera, one of them asked, approaching her. Sophia tensed, suddenly wary. Yes, can I help you? The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. I'm Jacob Wilson, attorney for Prescott Development. We need to discuss the future of this property. Sophia frowned, taking the card. What are you talking about? This farm belongs to Daniel Carter. The second man spoke up. Not for long. Prescott Development has purchased the banknote on this property. Mr. Carter is 3 months behind on his payments. Sophia felt like the ground had dropped out from under her. That's not possible. Daniel owns this farm outright. His father paid it off years ago. The first lawyer smiled thinly. I'm afraid Mr. Carter has been less than honest with you, Ms. Rivera. There's a substantial loan against this property, taken out 18 months ago, and as I said, it's in default. Sophia's mind raced. Daniel had never mentioned financial troubles. The farm seemed to be doing well, not making them rich, but comfortable enough. Could he have been hiding money problems from her? I'd like to see documentation, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. And I need to speak with Daniel before discussing this further. The second lawyer handed her a folder. These are copies of the relevant documents. Mr. Prescott is prepared to be generous if Mr. Carter vacates the property within 30 days. No further action will be taken regarding the default. Sophia took the folder, her hands shaking slightly. Get off this property, she said, her voice low. Now, before I call the sheriff. The lawyers exchanged glances. We'll be in touch, Ms. Rivera, the first one said. Mr. Prescott is very interested in resolving this situation, amicably. After they left, Sophia sat on the porch steps looking through the documents with growing horror. There was indeed a loan against the farm, a substantial one taken out by Daniel 18 months ago, and the payments were indeed in arrears, but something didn't add up. Why would Daniel need such a large loan? And why wouldn't he have told her about these financial problems? When Daniel returned from the market 2 hours later, Sophia was still on the porch, the folder beside her. One look at her face told him something was wrong. What happened? He asked, hurrying up the steps. Sophia handed him the folder. Richard's lawyers were here, she said flatly. They say you've defaulted on a loan and they've bought the debt. They're threatening foreclosure. Daniel's face drained of color as he looked through the documents. Sophia, I can explain. Please do, she said, her voice tight. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been hiding major financial problems while talking about our future together. Daniel sank down beside her on the steps, the papers clutched in his hand. The loan is real, he admitted, but it's not what you think. And I'm not behind on payments, at least. I wasn't last month when I made the payment. Then what is this? Sophia demanded, pointing to the document showing the missed payments. I don't know, Daniel said, his expression troubled. Either a mistake or he trailed off, then looked at her with sudden understanding. Or Richard somehow intercepted the payments. If they never reached the bank, it would look like I defaulted. Sophia wanted to believe him, but doubt had crept in. Why did you take out such a large loan in the first place? And why didn't you tell me about it? Daniel ran a hand through his hair. The loan was for the new irrigation system and greenhouse. I've been expanding the farm's production, trying to make it more profitable. He looked at her, his eyes pleading for understanding. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry. The farm's income more than covers the payments when things are going well. Sophia stood up, needing space to think. I trusted you, Daniel. I gave up my whole life to be here with you. If we're going to have a future together, there can't be secrets like this. You're right, Daniel said, standing to face her. I should have told you. But Sophia, you have to believe I would never put this farm at risk. It's my home, our home. Sophia wanted to believe him, but Richard's manipulations had shaken her. I need to think, she said, turning toward the house. And we need to figure out what's really going on with that loan. For the next few days, a tension hung between them that had never been there before. Daniel called the bank, confirming that the loan was indeed in default. The last 3 payments had never been processed. He showed Sophia the carbon copies of the checks he'd sent, proof that he'd made the payments on time. Someone intercepted them, he said grimly. And I think we both know who. Sophia nodded, her initial doubt fading as she saw the evidence of Richard's manipulation. He's trying to take the farm from you. From us, I won't let that happen, Daniel promised. This land has been in my family for generations. Even if it means taking out another loan to pay off this one, I'll find a way. But they both knew that with the farm already in default, no bank would approve a new loan. Richard had them trapped. That evening, as they sat at the kitchen table trying to figure out a solution, Sophia's phone rang. It was her mother. Sophia, Eleanor said without preamble. Have you heard from Richard's lawyers? Sophia's heart sank. Yes, they came to the farm yesterday. Mom, did you know about this? About Richard buying Daniel's loan? Not until today, Eleanor replied. Richard came to see me, bragging about how he was going to reclaim what's his by taking the farm. There was an edge to Eleanor's voice that Sophia had never heard before. I didn't raise you to be anyone's possession. Sophia, what do we do, Mom? Sophia asked, feeling suddenly like a little girl again, looking to her mother for answers. Daniel can't get another loan with the farm already in default. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I might be able to help, Eleanor said finally. I've been thinking a lot since my visit. About your grandmother, about the choices she made, and about you. What do you mean? Sophia asked. I have money set aside, Eleanor explained. Money your father doesn't know about, from when I sold my mother's house in Boston after she died. I was saving it for your wedding, but ... double quotes, she trailed off. How much is needed to clear the loan? Sophia looked at the documents spread on the table, her heart pounding. A lot, Mom, more than I could ever ask you for. Tell me the number, Sophia, Eleanor insisted. When Sophia told her, there was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Then, I can cover it. Not easily, but I can do it. Sophia felt tears spring to her eyes. Mom, why would you do this? You don't even approve of my life here. I'm beginning to think I was wrong, Eleanor admitted, her voice softer than Sophia had ever heard it. Seeing you there, in my mother's house, with a man who clearly loves you for who you are, it made me question some things. About my own choices, about what I've always wanted for you. Sophia wiped away tears. Thank you, Mom. Don't thank me yet, Eleanor said, her practical side reasserting itself. We need to move quickly, before Richard can push for foreclosure. I'll have my lawyer call you tomorrow. After hanging up, Sophia turned to Daniel, who had been listening to her side of the conversation with growing hope. My mother is going to help us, she said, still hardly believing it herself. She's going to pay off the loan. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. Your mother? The same woman who couldn't wait to get off this farm a week ago. Sophia smiled through her tears. Apparently, we've both been underestimating her. The next morning, Eleanor's lawyer called as promised. Within days, the paperwork was in motion to transfer the loan to Eleanor, effectively cutting Richard out of the equation. But they all knew Richard wouldn't give up so easily. He'll try something else, Sophia warned Daniel as they walked through the orchard, checking the apple trees that were just beginning to blossom. He's not going to accept losing. Let him try, Daniel said, putting his arm around her shoulders. We're stronger together than he is alone. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel turned to Sophia with a serious expression. I've been thinking, he said, about what happened with the loan, about how close we came to losing the farm. Sophia took his hand. It's okay now. My mother's taking care of it. I know, Daniel said, and I'm grateful, but it made me realize we can't keep putting off the future. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. This was my grandmother's, he said, opening it to reveal a simple gold ring with a small diamond. I've been carrying it around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Sophia's heart felt like it might burst as Daniel slid off the porch swing to kneel in front of her. Sophia Rivera, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I've loved you since the day you appeared at my fence, dusty and determined and more beautiful than anyone I've ever seen. I want to build a life with you here, on this land. Will you marry me? Sophia didn't hesitate. Yes, she whispered, pulling him up to kiss him. Yes, Daniel, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. As they held each other on the porch, the last rays of sunlight turning the fields golden, Sophia felt a peace that went beyond happiness. This was where she belonged. This was home. The next day they drove into town together to share their news. Their first stop was the vacant storefront that Sophia hoped to turn into her gallery. To their surprise, a lease sign hung in the window. Oh no, Sophia said, her heart sinking. Someone beat me to it. Before Daniel could respond, the door opened and Martha Peterson came out. There you are, the elderly woman exclaimed. I was hoping you'd stop by today. What do you think? Sophia blinked in confusion. Martha, did you lease the space? Martha laughed. Not me, dear. Your mother did, in your name. She called me yesterday, asked me to handle the paperwork since I'm on the town council. Said it was an engagement present, though she made me promise not to say anything until you told me yourselves. Sophia exchanged a stunned look with Daniel. How did she know we were engaged? We just decided last night. Martha winked. Mothers always know these things, don't they? Now come inside and see your gallery. The space was perfect. High ceilings, good light, original hardwood floors. Sophia walked through it in a daze, already envisioning how she would arrange the art, where she would put a small desk, which wall would showcase her grandmother's work alongside her own. I can't believe my mother did this, she said to Daniel, as they explored the space. After all those years of telling me art wasn't practical. ... double quotes. Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand. People can surprise you. Sometimes they just need a second chance to get it right. As if on cue, Sophia's phone rang. It was Eleanor. Did you see it? Her mother asked without preamble. We're standing in it right now, Sophia replied, her voice thick with emotion. Mom, I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem enough. You don't need to say anything, Eleanor told her. Just be happy, Sophia. That's all I've ever really wanted for you, even if I had a funny way of showing it. She paused. And congratulations on your engagement. Daniel's a good man. Sophia looked at Daniel, who was examining the old brick wall with a builder's eye, already planning improvements. Yes, she agreed. He is. After hanging up, Sophia joined Daniel at the window. My mother says congratulations, she told him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Daniel kissed the top of her head. Should we invite her to the wedding? Sophia smiled. Definitely. Along with the entire town. From the looks of it, she nodded toward the street where several locals had gathered, pointing and smiling at them through the window. News of their engagement had clearly spread fast as they left the gallery. People stopped to congratulate them. Mrs. Henderson hugged Sophia tightly. We always knew Daniel would find the right girl eventually, she said. Just had to wait for her to find her way here. Sophia laughed. I just wish I'd found my way here sooner. They spent the rest of the day in a happy blur, sharing their news and accepting congratulations. When they finally headed back to the farm, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Let's stop by the creek," Daniel suggested. As they neared the farm, "I want to show you something." They parked the truck and walked hand in hand down to Willow Creek, to the spot under the big willow tree where they'd shared so many conversations over the past months. To Sophia's surprise, a small wooden rowboat was tied to a newly built dock. "When did you do this?" she asked. Delighted, Daniel smiled. "I've been working on it for weeks. Thought it might be nice to have a place to sit on the water, watch the sunset." He helped her into the boat, then untied it and pushed off, letting the gentle current carry them a short distance before taking up the oars. The creek was peaceful in the evening light, water flowing gently around them. Daniel rowed them to the middle, then shipped the oars, letting the boat drift. "I've been thinking about the farm," he said, taking Sophia's hands across the small space between them. "About the future. I want to expand the vegetable production, maybe add some berry bushes along the south field. With your gallery in town and the farm growing, we could build something really special here." Sophia squeezed his hands. "Our own little empire," she teased. "Better than any empire," Daniel corrected. "A home. A real one, built on love and honesty and hard work." As they drifted under the branches of the willow tree, Sophia felt a sense of completion. In all the years she'd spent trying to fit into Boston society, trying to be what Richard and her mother wanted, she'd never felt this certainty. This was where she belonged. With Daniel, on this land, creating a life that was authentically theirs. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked, watching her face in the fading light. Sophia smiled. "I'm thinking about that first day, when I showed up at your fence looking like I'd been dragged behind a car, and you said I was beautiful." Daniel's eyes softened with the memory. You are. Not because of how you look, though that doesn't hurt," he smiled, "but because of who you are, your strength, your kindness, the way you see beauty in things other people overlook." Sophia leaned forward, nearly tipping the small boat, to kiss him. "I love you, Daniel Carter," she whispered against his lips. "Thank you for seeing me, the real me." As darkness fell, they rowed back to shore, walking hand in hand up to the farmhouse that had once belonged to Sophia's grandmother. The lights glowed warm and welcoming in the windows, calling them home. 2 months later, Sophia and Daniel were married under the willow tree by the creek, with the entire town in attendance. Eleanor came 3 days early to help with preparations, bringing Sophia's sister Kate, who had finally come around to supporting Sophia's choice. Richard never returned to Willow Creek, the last Sophia heard. Through Boston friends, he had become engaged to a senator's daughter, a match that would further his business interests and social standing. Sophia's gallery, which she named Elena's Place in honor of her grandmother, opened a week after the wedding. It featured her own paintings alongside work from local artists and 3 special pieces, her grandmother's landscapes from the library, on permanent loan. As for Willow Creek Farm, it flourished under Daniel and Sophia's care. They expanded the vegetable gardens, planted berry bushes, and renovated the old barn into a farm store where locals and visitors could buy fresh produce, honey, and handmade goods. On their first anniversary, Daniel took Sophia back to the spot, on the fence where they'd first met. The evening light was golden, just as it had been that day. "I have something for you," he said, handing her a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. Sophia unwrapped it to find a framed photograph, a black and white image of her leaning against the fence post, exhausted and dusty from her long walk. She looked up at Daniel in surprise. "How did you get this?" she asked. "I didn't know you took a picture that day." Daniel smiled. "I didn't. Mrs. Peterson did. She was driving by and saw you waiting. Said you looked like you belonged to the place. Already, even then." He touched the frame gently. "I wanted you to see what I saw that day. The most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, coming home to where she belonged." Sophia looked at the photograph, at her disheveled hair, her dirt-stained clothes, the weariness in her posture. But there was something else there too, something she hadn't recognized at the time. Hope, determination, the first glimmer of the woman she would become here at Willow Creek. "You were right," she said softly, looking up at her husband. "I did belong here. I just didn't know it yet." Daniel pulled her close, kissing her with the same tenderness he always showed. "I think we both found where we belong," he said against her hair. Together, as they walked back to the farmhouse hand in hand, Sophia felt a fullness in her heart that she never could have imagined that first day. She had come to Willow Creek broken and lost, searching for a place to heal. What she had found was so much more: a home, a purpose, and a love that saw her for exactly who she was. The farmhouse lights glowed warmly in the gathering dusk, welcoming them home. And as the stars began to appear in the sky above Willow Creek Farm, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that she had found her forever place, not in the glittering society world she'd left behind, but here on this simple farm, with the man who had seen her pure beauty even when she couldn't see it herself. The end.